on sports!
All right, gentlemen, we're here. I look outside and the deluge has ended. We seem to be talking about this every week. I was downtown today, absolutely ridiculous, the play of the roads that were closed. But, I was we went to Cleveland, went to the All-Star Fest, and then we had a trip canceled on us, so we ended up going down to York. And on one day, I walked in. I decided I wanted to see the York Stadium. So I boldly walked through the gates and walked in to see the place. And then on my way home, I pick up a package of this.
Yeah.
Who would have known that 24 hours later, York and that package would become big news? But we'll talk about that a little later. We also had the joy of seeing the women's team win their fourth World Cup title, back-to-back. Only the second women's team to win back-to-back titles. I thought it was kind of comical. The guys on Facebook and around were making fun of the girls because they were celebrating too much, which we all get pumped up about if our team does that. So I thought it was great. So I threw out the conversation on Facebook just to see if people would respond to our buddy Megan Rapinoe, and my God, I was blown away.
He went all the way. You got a buzz for us, Dave.
Oh, I was blown away, my friend.
Yeah.
I mean, and let me say, Megan Rapinoe she's a lightning rod, because I agree with what she's trying to say here, but then she goes out west and decides to claim that she's angry because there are two other guy games on the same day as the World Cup, which, I mean, they drew 1 billion. I'd be surprised if the guy games drew 1 million, but in the United States, this was a good thing for soccer in this country to have both teams on the same day. It's done. The Indy 500 and NASCAR's premier event are on the same day. Game 7 of World Series, NBA, NHL, when they win their titles, other sports are on. So, again, it was a stupid argument. Then she comes up with her science proves that you need lesbians on your team to win a championship, which I hope she was being sarcastic. It didn't kind of sound like it when you saw the article. But she had two things she had a platform for: equal pay for women and equal treatment of the not just gay athletes, but people across the country. And you're throwing this other bullshit out here that is confusing the issues. Not somebody I want to necessarily be trying to trump up a cause I want. But she comes back. If you heard her speech, I don't know if somebody pulled her aside and told her you're out of control, or maybe she just figured it herself. She basically apologized, and then she gave a great, inspiring speech at the parade. I don't know if you guys got a chance to hear it.
Yeah, I did.
But, I mean, all this aside, when we're talking about, and I'm talking tonight with Chris the Bulldog Fletcher, Gary the Bulldog Kin, and I am Dave the Bulldog Finoli. So tonight we will share that nickname. But, the thing is, she's right. I mean, I'm not a guy who's looking for equal rights here. I've always been when it comes to sports. Now, huge Title IX fan, because colleges are not business. You're not paying the athletes. You're just basically presidents sucking up as much money as you can. So I'm all for Title IX, or women's sports would be forgotten. And it has made stars out of a lot of them, and it has helped put a lot through school, including my daughter. So I'm a big Title IX fan, but when it comes to professional sports, and this, people call it U.S. soccer amateur. It's not amateur. They're paying them to play the game. But the thing is, I've always been a revenue first kind of guy. I wouldn't say that women's professional soccer deserves more than men's professional soccer because the MLS generates a hell of a lot more. I don't think the WNBA deserves anywhere near the NBA because the NBA generates a lot more. But here's the thing. Women's soccer over the last 3 years, the U.S. women's soccer team has generated $50.8 million. The men's have generated $49.9 million. The women's final in the World Cup got a 10% or a 10 rating, which whatever that is, the equivalent came to 1 billion people. The men's final generated an 8.3. Now this 10 is beginning at 11 in the morning. You're not getting a prime time like the men had. So, yeah, if you're going down the line, and every guy who has always had that argument, well, men generate more. Title IX stupid because men generate more. Well, okay, you want that argument? The women generated more, yet they made 39.8% of what the men made. Now, I agree with the fact that men's World Cup soccer is a cash cow, and women's World Cup soccer is a low percentage of it. But when your men's team sucks and they don't make the World Cup, that whole FIFA argument goes out the window. What does it matter what the World Cup is worth when your team isn't in the World Cup and not generating the money? I mean, it brings a whole other dimension of what a cluster U.S. soccer is right now when it comes to the men's team. These are talented guys. They're older guys. The only success you've had recently is on the U17 and U20 team. So why they just don't, if you're going to stink, take these kids and grow them into a team. This is what the women have done. There is no real other competition for the women. So the U.S. team is their team. So basically they've grown together. The men have not. That's probably the angle I would take. But regardless, in any way, shape, and form, no matter what you think of Megan Rapinoe, which seems to be the lightning rod on why probably 60 or 70% of the people I was talking to did not want them to get it because they didn't want her to get it. So that's fine, but I got arguments from the men are bigger, stronger, and it's a better sport, so they should get the more money. Well, does that mean Starling Marte, who gets $10 million, should not make as much as Sidney Crosby, who gets $8.5 million? No, baseball generates more money than hockey, so that's correct. I just think this is basically it comes down from what I'm hearing is, it's the male dominant 1950s attitude on why these women shouldn't generate as much money. The only thing I see as a proper argument, which I don't agree with, but if you're to make a proper argument, is that it might cost more money since the men make a decent salary. It might cost more money to entice them to play on the team, but you're getting the best guys in the world, so to speak, and they suck. There's no reason a man's team, because that was the other argument I was getting, well, it's easier for the women to get into the World Cup. No. CONCACAF is one of the worst areas for men's soccer. There's no reason with 4 bids that the United States should never get a bid to a World Cup. Same with Mexico. And the fact that they have not gotten that bid, I would take money away from them. I would fire everybody I could fire and take money away from them. But in no way, shape, and form does that mean that the women should get screwed the way they are. Fletch, your thoughts on?
Well, here's my thought. The women shouldn't be paid as much as the men, especially when you're talking about the performance. They should be being paid more. I mean, and the thing about it, guys, this isn't as cut and dry as you might think. During those 3 years following the 2015 Women's World Cup, you're right, Dave, the women brought in slightly more revenue from the games than the guys did. But here's the thing. It's a little complicated because the marketing and the sponsorships, they're sold as a bundle. So It's kind of hard to tell. But, there's anecdotal signs that the women's brand is surging. But, how much less are they being paid? I'm not sure. I mean, they are being paid less, no question about that. But I don't think the gap is as big as we've been told. I mean, a lot of the problem is a lot of this collective bargaining that they're operating under, it's shrouded in secrecy. So it's not really transparent. You know, the lawsuit that was filed in that, it was under the old operating agreement. Now, apparently one that was signed in 2017, it says that there's been raises in base pay and bonuses. That's according to the Associated Press. But again, no one really knows what they're being paid for this thing. The other factor is, you mentioned that the men do have to play more games in more places to earn a berth in the World Cup. That's a problem. But, the big thing is what you mentioned, Dave, is with other sports, sponsorship money talks. I mean, part of the issue is the overall state of women's and men's soccer games around the world. You have more money that's flowing into the men's professional leagues around the world. And for some reason, that approach seems to be funneled down to the national teams. For 2018, the World Cup, the prize money was $400 million for the men compared to $30 million for the Women's World Cup. So that's a huge difference. So it's almost essentially guaranteed that the women would end up with far less prize money than the men could have, even though the women won the championship. And it doesn't look like that disparity is going to, it's not going to go anytime soon. They just announced the prize money for the 2020 in Qatar, and it's going to be $440 million, $60 million for the women, $440 for the men, $60 for the women. That's quite a difference.
Yeah.
So what happens here? Personally, I think you're going to see more legislators weigh in on this, and U.S. soccer is going to have to be more transparent. And I think it's a good thing because, if nothing else, it's going to shine the light on the issue of pay equity outside of sports. That issue of gender pay discrepancy is a problem that's across the board in this country. On average, women are paid about 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. Maybe like what it did with race equity, sports can lead the way here, guys.
Yeah. That's point to you, Gil.
I mean, the only – I agree with everything both of you said, but a couple different things here you got to keep into consideration, which, I don't have an issue with Rapinoe and her personality. I mean, I don't particularly like it, but on the other hand, that's not the issue to me at hand here. This isn't corporate America. This is a nonprofit organization that is funded by sponsorship money, advertising, TV money, and those kind of things. And the issue I think both of you touched on is the transparency of it. If I'm an advertiser, if I'm Geico or I'm whatever advertising during these World Cup tournaments, and I'm looking at what's happened over the last 4 or 5 World Cups, clearly people want to see the women play. And perhaps what you said, Dave, I don't think a lot of people care as much about the men anymore. They're not getting very far beyond the construction of the team and all that kind of stuff. It just doesn't seem like people are as interested. They're much more interested in these women's teams. Whether it's because they're winning and they're going further, I don't know. I don't know enough about soccer. But the bottom line is you would think that U.S. soccer would say, you know what? We need to make this more equitable. It may not be completely equal for the reasons Fletch outlined, but we do need to make this more equitable because, quite frankly, they're the ones who are bringing us the attention. They're the ones who are bringing us the sponsorship money. They're the ones who are bringing us Adidas, whoever, puts money into this stuff. So, I mean, I think it's going to change. The trouble is it's like everything else in professional sports. Your deals are negotiated long before you get to the point that change is occurring. Just like having to sign a first baseman for a 7-year contract that has 1 good year and then he's injured in 6 years of nothing. It's kind of the same situation here. So all of the talking about it, I think, is a good thing, but the reality of the matter is it doesn't happen overnight. It's going to change over time. I do think this will change over time because when you look at those ratings, beyond just the performance, clearly the big money that's coming in here is going to say, I want my money there. And if U.S. soccer is not going to do that, they're going to have some answering to do to some of the people that really are controlling some of the activity here, in my view. I mean, I think the other thing, this is not, the one thing I will say, which probably won't be a popular thing here for some people who might be watching this, Dave, or who responded, but this isn't regular business either. Professional sports isn't regular business. If you're working in the retail business or some kind of company, or you're working in banking or financial services or whatever, there's clear problems there, and there have been for a lot of years. Unfortunately, They may have the forum because of the public forum to talk about it. I'm not really sure it's 100% legitimate that some of these people, Rapinoe on down, are really all that concerned about that. I think they're also looking for a little bit of attention. Perhaps I'm skeptical. The bottom line is there's a problem there. There's a problem more there than there is in a nonprofit, tightly controlled money organization that's dependent upon money coming in and saying, here's where I want my money to go. So I don't know if you can compare the two things equally, in my personal view. However, I do think the change is coming, particularly in soccer, because it clearly appears that it goes all the way back to the team. I can't remember the woman's name, but with the famous pose in the late 90s. You know, they play a little bit more emotion. They clearly give more of a damn. You know, people seem to get a kick out of the fact that these women are playing at this competitive level and playing in world-class competition like this. This is where it seems like soccer in America on the men's side is really taking clearly a back seat. So the argument clearly that they should get a bigger equal piece of the pie should be made. I think it's going to happen over time. But by the other hand, I don't think we can compare it to regular business either. You know, in regular business, you're not driven so much by all these other sources of money coming in. And as you say, Dave, I'm sorry, up until the last 4 or 5 World Cups, the men was the game that was watched. It's got nothing to do with sexism or anything else. That's changing. Therefore, I think there will be a natural correction in this from that money coming in. But players in the National Lacrosse League don't make as much as the NHL, and the NHL isn't going to make as much as the NBA or Major League Baseball will. That's life. That's just the way it is. I don't think that, again, has anything to do with sex discrimination, money discrimination, else. That's just a fact of life. If I work in a convenience store, I'm not going to make as much as somebody working in investment banking in New York City. It's ugly, but it's life. And I think that's part of what's going on here too. So,
well, you're the two things. I mean, when we're talking about, people want to lump together FIFA and U.S. soccer. What we're talking here is U.S. soccer and what they are given on a base pay from U.S. soccer.
Right.
Fletch, you're probably right. They probably, there's more in here if you include what FIFA is throwing in. What they're talking about is what U.S. soccer pays them versus paying the men. Now, FIFA, on the other hand, the men's game is a bear compared to the women. It's starting to close. It's probably not as separate as the 448 versus 60 million. I mean, it's probably, the women's game is starting to gain ground, but what we're speaking here is just on a basis of what U.S. soccer pays.
Right.
Right. For friendlies, for everything that represents U.S. soccer. Another thing when you look at Rapinoe, she's 34 years old. So what she's fighting for here, she's not going to see.
True.
Because she's not going to be there at 38 years old.
Right.
That's correct. And I mean, one thing they have no other options. This is women's soccer. As much as people want to bitch about this and that, if you want women's soccer to be on a grander scale, go to the U.S. Professional League. I mean, to me, that's a lot what happens when we talk about the inequity of women's professional sports is women aren't sports fans. And I don't know of a lot of guys that go see the women's games. So that's where the revenue falls flat on its face when you're talking to on a professional level. And to me, that hurts the women in this situation because they have no other options. I mean, most of these guys are either playing in Europe or they're playing in the MLS. And if they don't play for the U.S. team, their financial world's not going to
So be it. Right.
So that's why, I mean, right now is when the iron is hot. And that's when they need to push hard. And I do back them on this because they've made their case with the revenue. They've made their case, and Fletch, you're right, they do it in a bundle. But if you look at the ratings, and again, it's a World Cup, that's pretty damn impressive. And on the other end, you look at what do you want to invest in U.S. soccer. The men are no better than they were in the 1980s. They're worse than they were in the 1980s. They're worse than – this is a country that has grown in soccer substantially since the 80s. And yet they're in the same damn place. They're not even in the World Cup. And, I mean, I'm not saying to cut what you're giving them substantially, but I'm saying invest in the winner. I mean, unless you can figure out what you're doing wrong in men's, you're going in circles here. You're not going to be a power in men's soccer unless you do something different. I think the only way to start it is by, as I said, doing what the women have done and keep these young kids together and let them grow. And maybe you don't make the next World Cup, but hopefully down the road it gets a little better as a group. But right now, I don't know why you'd even want to invest in them.
And that's more an argument for these women getting equal pay, because I think that their side of it's going the other way.
Yeah.
It's going the other way. And the fact that they don't have any options is probably another reason that they're winning. But it is interesting. And Fletch touched on a very important thing. And I don't know if you got a chance to see it, Dave. I think I texted you about it. The Washington Post, and a woman writer yet, did an analysis of this. The disparity is not anywhere near what the general sports media, again, I know I keep criticizing this, reported. Men make $1 million if they win the tournament. The Americans have never come close to winning the World Cup. They have to play a lot more. They have to play a lot more of these friendlies and things like that to make more money, too. I mean, it's not a lot of money. I was surprised how low it was, taking 2 years of your life to win these tournaments and things like that. But women get a guaranteed amount. So they don't have to play at all. All they got to do is play in a World Cup, perhaps. So I know you got to get ready for the tournament and that kind of thing. But, again, the disparity isn't quite what the media reported it to be. But
it's about the same, Gary, as what it is in American society. They're really paid about, 11 to 12% less.
Yep. That's what I pretty much the Washington reporter said. Washington Post reporter, when she looked at all the documents and figured it out. That's correct. And I don't think that's equitable. And I think in this particular situation, if this was the WNBA with the NBA complaining about that, I would say we should just stop the conversation because it's nonsense. That's not the case.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
About international sport like this, nonprofit organizations accumulating money to be competitive in this. And Dave, you're hit the nail on the head. It kind of reminds me of hockey in Canada and the U.S. when you come to this, what's it called? The Canada Cup tournaments and things like that, or the World Cup. What incentive does a guy making $12 million in the NHL have to go out and bust his butt to do this or even do it?
Yeah.
If he's recovering from injuries and stuff. That's why these international tournaments and the Olympics and things like that are probably better off going back to some of the old thinking. And if there's a guy who really wants to do this, fine, he can do it. But trying to load your roster with guys that are playing professional soccer in the MLS or have big international experience or something that can make money that way, what are you going to get? I mean, you're not going to get what you're going to get out of the women who, as you say, this is their only option, really. They don't have a lot of other options. So, I mean, it seems to me that maybe the thinking, again, U.S. boxing in the Olympics has fallen through the floor because of its ridiculously poor leadership. Doesn't sound like quite U.S. soccer's that far, but it sounds like it needs a change as well in the same regard. Because we're just seem to be falling behind.
It's like taking the Lakers and the Celtics and throwing them into a division of Division II college teams and saying, okay, 4 teams can come out of here and go to the World Championships. You expect the Lakers and Celtics to go out there every time.
Right.
That's the disparity between the U.S. and the rest of CONCACAF. So it is. I mean, and to say, I know it is technically a nonprofit, but that nonprofit is going in the pockets of the heads of.
I'm not disputing any of that. And I think that the lack of transparency and their quietness here tells me, not that we're not Watergate reporters here, but the fact that they've been so deathly quiet about this whole thing tells you something's not so good. What do you guys?
And that's what's going to come out. It's not going to be the inequity of pay that's going to come out of this. It's going to be where the money's going.
Yeah, something's not so good here. Right.
I mean, it's like calling UPMC a nonprofit when the heads of UPMC are making enough to buy professional franchises.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be something that's going to smell bad here.
Yeah.
So from Rapinoe's standpoint, if she brought that to a head, that's fine. I mean, I do think, when you start going too far off the deep end, what you started out doing gets lost. And unfortunately, that's probably what's happening.
Well, I think that's the way it started out. But if you hear what she said at the parade, she was nail on it. She was a leader, nail on the head.
Yep.
Right.
Just, she's doing what she should be doing. I mean, she has a platform. I mean, there is a great inequity with women's sports in the countries, in soccer, when it shouldn't be, as we're talking about here. Maybe not as great as what's being reported. She has that. She's a gay athlete who's looking for equality for all Americans in a world where, for some reason, the equality seems to be going backwards the last few years. And that's what she needs to focus on, because they're valid points, and she has the pulpit now. In 6 months, she will not have the pulpit. And that's why things as far as you're playing the same games on the same day, or trying to jump out and saying science says you need lesbians on a team to win.
You hurt yourself. Yeah,
you're hurting yourself. You're losing your pulpit. What she did at the parade put the pulpit back. And I hope she goes balls to the walls the next few months on these issues, because she's going to lose it before too long, because she's not going to be part of the team.
Well, I think the light's been exposed on U.S. soccer, though, Dave, for all the business reasons and the construction of the team that you said. And I think the fact that this lack of transparency of what they're actually doing with that money and how they're allocating it, and it sounds like they're antiquated, need to come to the forefront, too. Things change, just as we've seen in baseball. You don't change, not radically, but you don't make some consideration or think about it, you're going to face a problem. So that's a good thing that came out of this, for U.S. soccer, at least, the way it seems.
Sure.
So.
You look like you want to chime in there, Fletch.
No, I mean, I just think that it's time to have the conversation and to be a little more transparent. And, Dave, I'm with you. It's time to clean house there. The men's team has been a joke for how long?
Yeah.
And the World Cup is such an opportunity, because most Americans aren't really rabid soccer fans. The World Cup will engage them into following the sport more. Following the sport more money. More money. It all works together.
Yep.
Yeah. And I would agree that. And as I said, I would, if it's me, I take these kids, because if the U.S. men hadn't, and just embarrassingly blew what was an easy opportunity into the last World Cup, we're not having this conversation.
Right.
We're not having this conversation.
It's almost like Pirate front office is running USA Soccer.
Well,
have we seen the leadership in the same room with Neil Huntington?
Can we trade Manfred over there? Let's put Manfred over there, maybe.
Well, when you see Seven Springs as the major sponsor of U.S. soccer, something will have gone wrong at that point. But I just, as I said, I mean, that's the thing. Irritated about the inequity of pay. Don't get me wrong; they deserve it because they've earned it. But this just brings up the whole men's soccer thing time and time again. It has been pissing me off for 2 years now, because there's just no excuse for it.
Well, the one thing that Rapinoe did and the other teammates did here pretty well is these deals generally, I would imagine, when they play the World Cup is it 2 years or 4 years? 4 years.
Yeah.
So clearly, the executives of all of these big sponsors, or whoever the manufacturers are of the equipment, stuff like that, they got a lot of years to prepare for this now. So, and they're not going to want a lightning rod of saying, "No, I want my money going over to the men's program that's floundering." They're not going to want that to get out there. So already the situation is going to start to change. The trouble is the deals were negotiated before all of this started to change. I don't think in the future it's going to be clearly as inequitable. I think it's going to be fixed for a lot of reasons, political ones and other ones.
So here's my rat's ass meter going on the men's team. It's like around here.
Yes.
The women way up here. And I'm not a soccer fan, as you know.
I couldn't get over how many people watched that at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday.
I agree.
That was July 4th weekend, but that was stunning. Looking at those numbers, that was amazing.
And it was a brilliant game. I mean, they did exactly what they had to do. Outscored their opponents 26-3.
Yeah, that's amazing.
They,
At that level of athlete, I don't care whether, there's not as many great women's soccer players. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah.
And you know what? If the rest of the world doesn't like their celebrations, the rest of the world can shove it up their ass. I'm sick of hearing sports reporters, "Ooh, you shouldn't have done that. You brought, screw you." And I want to say something different, but I'm a good man, so I'll just say screw you.
A lot of them are younger women. They're still kids. Some of them,
They're having fun.
Yeah, that's that kind of nonsense. It's okay to watch some jerk off stand or watch a home run for a minute, I guess, but some 22-year-old girl is playing a world stage like that, scores a couple goals, you make a big deal. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I agree with you. But all right, I think we've decided to give the girls money, so we don't need Congress enacting anything.
Keep them out of it. That'll take longer that way. So.
We're going to take our break. When we come back from our break, we're going to have a nice UFC discussion in your segment.
It's really a business discussion. It's amazing the business difference between that and boxing. That's what I want to touch on. So.
And Chris will be doing his best bulldog.
If I had a hat, it would fall off.
And I'll be touching a little bit on, Justin Verlander getting his ass spanked by Joe Torre. So we will be back after the break. The Busher of the Week. You keep that. We'll be seeing that again soon.
We will.
We will be back.
I'm curious which one's the Busher of the Week. I think we have a little drama for the second half.
Well, we'll bring that then. See you in the second half.
Unlucky 21, one of the greatest collections of stories on the history of sports in Western Pennsylvania that was never told. Unlucky 21 at your bookstores on Amazon.com. Get it.
All right, we're back from our break. We've made big decisions on women's soccer, and we have a lot more to decide in the next half hour. I got to tell you, I spent the day watching the original CBS broadcast of the Apollo 11 mission.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah.
That was sweet. It was a sweet afternoon.
Yeah.
What's going to be even sweeter is we have a lot of boxing, and I'm not going to go over what I just saw in UFC, but I'll leave the technical stuff to Gary. So, but it sounds like we got some exciting stuff. I got an email from ESPN Plus with a lot of great boxing matches coming up, and you tell me there's more to UFC than what I just saw. So, let's go.
Well, I mean, I think the thing I just want to bring out here, and I don't know, we'll eventually figure out who our watchers are or people are paying attention to us are. But
I was paying attention. I just want to say that.
I know. Well, I'm glad you are, at least.
Okay.
You say something, Gary? I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
That's been the reaction I'm used to most of my life, and for good reason, by the way. But it's interesting that, and I know we'll qualify it like we talked about a little bit on this show even, that the UFC is controlled by a few strong personalities and we have various dueling promoter interests and everything else. But comparing the two sports and why one is rising and why one is failing was painfully obvious this past weekend. The UFC celebrates its past better than boxing does at the moment. They had 2 award shows over July 4th weekend where they, ask a bunch of fans to come all the way out to Las Vegas for this stuff. They had an award show where they handed awards out for best fight of the year, best fighter, that kind of stuff, organized night before July 4th. And the night after July 4th, they celebrate their Hall of Fame. And they enter, guys from all kinds of eras, from the very formative days all the way to the current era. And then what they do is they put on their best card of the year with a lot of their best names. It may not be recognizable to the average sports fan, but recognizable to people who follow combat sports on the same card. The card on July 6th had 8 fighters who were all at the top of the sport in reputation and ability on that card. You'll never see that in pro boxing. So, unfortunately, pro boxing is going to continue to lose. Pro boxing has a tremendous history over July 4th. All the way back to Johnson Jeffries, even before that, and then subsequent to that. You didn't see one major boxing match the weekend before July 4th or the weekend after. And the UFC put 3 of its all-time greatest fighters on one card. They also offer all of their events to all the fans, a lot of them for free, weigh-ins, things like that. Boxing never does that. You realize you have 16 different dueling interests in boxing, only one controlling party in UFC. But the fact of the matter is, if anyone wants to know, and particularly for younger people, why the distance is widening, that was a prime example. I mean, the card was a great card. John Jones is probably the Tom Brady or somebody like that in the UFC, and he had a tough test, and he did win again on Saturday, and the card was very good from top to bottom. But again, boxing misses an opportunity, which is something I'll probably talk about from time to time when we talk about this. There's a lot of interesting boxing coming up. One of the best fights of 2018 was Rob Brandt, an American middleweight yet, and a very good one, a very talented one. Not a screaming, yelling into the camera, crime-laden type of guy, but a very good one.
Rapino.
What's that?
He's no Rapino.
No, he's not.
Okay.
But he's one of the best middleweights in the sport right now, and he's from, I think, Chicago, I believe it is, if I recall. And he's fighting a guy in a rematch, Ryoto Murata from Japan, who's an all-action fighter. It was one of the best fights of last year. It's on ESPN Plus at a weird time at 7 a.m., but other than ESPN Plus's marketing of it, if you don't have that, you have no idea this is even happening. Big problem.
That's insane.
Completely insane. One of the best featherweights in the world, Ray Vargas, who's about 6 feet tall. Hard to believe he can make 126 pounds. He's very good. I've seen him live a couple times. He's in a very difficult fight this coming weekend against Takoki Kameda, another all-action Japanese fighter, and the fight's taking place in America, in California. Not a word, okay? We need the wide world of sports back. And then there are about 12 heavyweights in action over the next 2 weekends on both ESPN Plus and DAZN that are not at the level of Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, even Andy Ruiz, who upset Joshua, but they're close, and they're candidates. Again, not a word. Compare the two businesses. Anybody wants to say whether you hate the violence of the UFC or you hate its presentation or you hate its pro wrestling aspect, look at the two sports. You can see why one is going one way and one's going another way. So that's all I really need to say about it. I think if people like boxing, I would tune in to or dial up. I'm not sure you're going to get up at 7 o'clock on Friday morning because it's in Japan, but watch Brandt and Murata's second fight. It may not be as good as the first because we know how the rematches sometimes go. Very good fight. If you have DAZN, watch Ray Vargas and Kameda on Saturday night. And there's a bunch of heavyweights on FS1, Robert Helenius and Gerald Washington, as well as next weekend on DAZN from Britain, that are guys that have a chance to compete with these big names that we're talking about. And I don't know, maybe it was the time of the year, July 4th weekend, U.S. women's soccer team, baseball all-star game, but Wilder and Fury signed for a rematch starting February, going to be staged on February 22nd. That was the best heavyweight fight in a number of years in December, the year before last.
Wow.
Nobody ever knows about it.
But here's the thing, Gary. Would you want to actually schedule against Joey Chestnut? That's a no-win situation for any sport.
That's a lose for any fighter. I agree.
What would you be watching between the two?
71 hot dogs. I'm telling you, man.
I think he's a puss boy. Yeah, I'm going to say he's a puss boy for not shooting for 75. You got 71 in you already. What possibly is 3 more going to hurt you?
Guys, I told you that humidity got him. I predicted that.
You did. You called that one. Yes.
And I knew he wouldn't hit 75.
Isn't that an advantage? You could just wave your hot dog in the air rather than dipping it?
Well, I suppose you could. But, people get in trouble for waving their hot dogs in the air. Remember that.
Apparently they don't in the UFC, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we need to talk about that one later. That is funny, Dave, your reaction. So, but no, I mean, I think it's interesting. One business clearly, it may be the solitary control, but I don't think that's all of it. I just think it's more forethought, more planning, a better marketing job, and honestly, doing the right thing. If you're dragging people out to Las Vegas on a holiday weekend, all that money, hotel rooms jacked up 20% to come out to this stuff, you got to do them justice. You can't put a bunch of junk together. and White didn't.
But here's the thing, Gary. They have to be that way because they're the underdog. They're the upstarts. So they had to act that way. And it became part of their culture. Whereas boxing, they didn't. There was nothing that was spurring them to innovate. Now,
You're right.
Now maybe they will, but it might be a little late for them.
I think it may be. I think it's got some similar problems to baseball versus some of the other sports, and the pieces of baseball are getting taken away. And you're right. You're 100% right, Fletch. Some of the books I've been reading about the formation of the UFC and some of the activity, nobody paid any attention to it. It was unregulated. It was illegal. And they had to be innovative, just like the ABA, NBA, and the AFL, NFL. And that's exactly what you're seeing. And
there's no merger. Or would that save boxing if you tried? And I'm saying this, and try to do maybe dual matches.
Well, it's interesting. I buy White's Fight Pass because I'm interested in the business, and obviously I'm going to continue to pay attention to it. And he does have 3 promoters that put their shows on: Roy Jones Jr., which is a name you guys know, Lou DiBella, and I can't remember, Dropkick Murphys. I think they're musicians, Fletch. You probably may have.
They are.
Yeah, they're out of
Boston guys, and they like boxing. They're Ireland guys, and they're Boston.
I'm a fan.
Those 3 promoters' shows are exclusively on Fight Pass. So I think White is going, Dave, the way that you suggest. And he actually started out as a boxing fan primarily.
So you're saying the Dropkick Murphys are promoters in the UFC?
They are promoters of professional boxing, but their cards are on UFC Fight Pass exclusively.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
So is Lou DiBella, who's a famous promoter, the former HBO matchmaker.
Yes, he
His
was.
cards are not as good. His cards are not as good anymore. Can't quite figure out exactly what he's doing. But Roy Jones Jr., these cards are not at the level of talent that a Bob Arum or Al Heyman or even, like people like that have. But, it may only be a matter of time because, White's Fight Pass he has something like 3 million subscribers or something. So, it may only be a matter of time before you start to see the balance change there. But, Fletch, I think you're right on the money when you look at the sports history of the 2 of them combined. And I don't think boxing's fat, dumb, and happy, but it certainly isn't innovative. So
it's definitely dumb. No question.
Definitely dumb. Yep.
Oh, man. Now, Mr. Fletch, it was not a good day yesterday. Not a good day at all.
It was not. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the 3 of us, we aren't exactly voracious readers, unless it comes to sports. And one book that I know all 3 of us have read is Balfour. And that was written by Jim Bouton, who passed away on Wednesday after a long battle with strokes and dementia. And, I've heard this description of dementia. And this is really good. It's when a person is disconnected from his or her life story. And, you think about it, what a life story Jim Bouton had. He came up as this fireballer for the New York Yankees. He threw so hard, and I mentioned it earlier in the show, that his hat often fell off. He was like Nellie Bryles before Nellie Bryles. He was 21-8 for that Yankees 1961 championship team. Pitched in a few World Series games. Fan favorite. Somewhat in the shadow of Whitey Ford, but he's sort of like their Allie Reynolds, I guess you would consider for that team. But then he blew his arm out in '65. Kind of hung around for a few years. To try to save his career, he picked up a knuckleball, and he was rewarded by being sent to the expansion Seattle Pilots in their 1-year existence. And that time in Seattle, that led to his writing of Balfour, which, is it was a warts and all look at baseball. We learned that players drank. They took greenies. They chased women, and they swore. They swore
get calls, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And they were very colorful in their swearing.
They were.
Haven't to swear better.
Oh, man. I remember my dad didn't want me reading about – my mom was horrified of the words. And my dad was like to think of the players that he grew up with as gods and
saints.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Bouton broke all the rules with that book, and it cost him. Players hated him, especially the Yankees, because of Bouton's depictions of Mickey Mantle. They could never forgive him for that. He talked about mixed problems that he had.
He was right, but yeah, you're right. He never got forgiven. You're right.
He was basically blackballed by the sport that he loved. Bowie Kuhn, the commissioner, wanted the book banned. But, Pete Rose had maybe the best player review of all. Bouton got traded to the Houston Astros, and they were playing the Reds the first time, and Rose got to the first row of the dugout, yelled at him, "Fuck you, Shakespeare." And
that's good.
But,
that's good.
Bouton told great stories, and one of my favorites was around Ted Williams. And I'm going to read you guys the selection from the book. Ted Williams, when he was still playing, would psych himself up for a game during batting practice before the fans or reporters got there. He'd go into the cage, wave his bat at the pitcher, and start screaming at the top of his voice, "My name is Ted fucking Williams, and I'm the greatest hitter in baseball." He'd swing and he'd hit a line drive. Then he'd say, "Jesus H. Christ himself couldn't get me out." Then he'd hit another. And here comes Jim Bunning. Jim fucking Bunning and that little shit slider of his. Blam. He doesn't really think he's going to get me out with that shit. Blam. Guys, that's some damn good writing.
That's good stuff.
That's good one of my all-time favorite moments combines sports and music. I was fortunate enough to hang out with a band that I told you guys about. They're called the Baseball Project.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you saw them at all, Dave, when they were in Cleveland over the All-Star Game festivities, but amazing. They're made up of members of the band, the Dream Syndicate, REM, Young Fresh Fellows, and all they do is they write songs about baseball. So one night, I'm hanging out. I went to see them, and I was hanging out with them afterwards at the Clemente Museum. And Steve Wynn was one of the band members, and he was telling me about the song that he wrote called Ted fucking Williams, and it was about that part of the book. And, when I told him that I read the book twice, he said he did too. And then right beside me is Mike Mills from REM, and he said, "You know what, guys, I read it 3 times. And then Scott McGuy, another member of the band, says, "Hey, I read it 4 times. And so we talked about baseball until about 3 in the morning that time. And, Ball 4 stoked all of us in our love for the game,
Yeah.
I have to say this, R.I.P. Jim Bouton, and I think it's time that I reread the book.
I'm going to buy his newest version that he put out in 2014 and do the same thing. It supposedly has a great new epilogue and look at his life, which I'd love to read before it. But, yeah, I'm going to do the same thing, my friend. Well said.
And I liked your prop earlier in the show, the Big League Chew.
It was weird. I was at a little country store in York, and I saw it there, and it's like, I haven't bought this in like 20 years.
Yeah.
Buy a pack. So I certainly an ironic purchase, but certainly one he's well known for with his days in the Portland Mavericks.
Yep, and the TV show. Do you guys remember Ball 4?
I forgave him for that. That was
I don't remember that, actually. That's interesting. I don't remember that.
Ben
It was a
Davidson,
bad
if I'm not mistaken, was the first
Ben
case.
Davidson from the Raiders was also in that.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I'm just glad we're talking about the Seattle Pilots, one of baseball's most iconic teams and one of its most mysterious. Very few people saw that.
I still love the baseball cap for the Pilots, though.
Me too. Love it. Love the uniform. Love the uniform. Particularly the road one and the home one. Loved it. So one of baseball's most interesting and most iconic teams and most mysterious.
Well, I got to tell you, I wonder what Jim Bouton would, if he had lived another day and could see it. I wonder what he would have thought of Justin Verlander, who came out like a ball of fire earlier in the week and just basically blasted the majors for the juice ball and basically asked them, "Are you fucking kidding?" When they tried to deny it was a juice ball. They're on pace to hit 6,668 home runs against a record of 6,105. And Manfred, who has scientists, he's hired scientists, probably the same ones that certain people have hired to deny climate change. They're probably the same scientists. So what they found is there's just a little less drag on the ball this year. And in fact, it's all baseball that's causing the home runs. Has nothing to do with the fact the fucking ball is juiced. Justin Verlander was right on pace, and Jim Bouton was proud of that. Where Jim Bouton would have been pissed is when apparently Jim Leland and Joe Torre pulled him in the office, had him pull down his pants and had him paddled, and had him ask, "Thank you, can I have another?" Because he came out for what had to be a set-up interview, and basically was a big old puss boy about the subject in the dugout. Which, you know, I mean, the only winner in what Czar Manfred, and that's what he'll be dubbed from now on, Czar Manfred. The only winner in this is the Atlantic League, which is getting PR out the wazoo for their league that they probably have never seen in their lifetime. Every day on ESPN, we hear about it. And who knew, when I went in to tour the York Stadium the other day, I had no idea that the Revolution, no idea that evening that they were going to announce the first robot umpire for balls and strikes.
Okay.
Which is the thing I agree with. But then to double up by stealing first base, which you take a decent item, and then you have to couple it with one of the stupidest ideas I've ever heard. Pass ball, steal first base.
Right. It's
there's only one person who should ever steal first base.
Who is that person?
And that's Lloyd McClendon. That's the only person who should ever steal first base.
I thought you were going to talk about one of the famous talk show hosts in this country.
Well, Mom on the Right stole my heart, but she didn't steal first base.
Like to get to first base, perhaps.
Oh.
Steal it.
Just not to respond to tell us.
You can get there on a pass ball, apparently.
That's right. You can head right down that way now.
Oh man!
I'll call my shot though.
I recognized your hat, York Revolution. I did recognize that. Watch a lot of Atlantic League baseball over the years.
What a neat stadium that was. That was truly.
Atlantic League's got some great ballparks. Frank Bolton, who is the founder of the Atlantic League, was a genius. He was on the outside of Major League Baseball, but Long Island, Somerset, New Jersey, Camden was great. I mean, really great ballparks.
Well, if
1909, fantastic.
If this is the same guy who's in charge now, I mean, think of the brilliant move. Every time you watch TV on ESPN, something new that's going to be played in the Atlantic League.
Getting attention, yeah. Well, they don't have an affiliation with Major League Baseball, so that's why they use it as experimental. I think that's
great.
Yep.
I think for their aspect, that's great. I think most of what they're trying out is stupid.
Yeah.
But
hey, it's good PR. And plus, Dave, don't they have a Trogs beer stand there? Is that what you told me?
That was in
Central PA. Yeah.
That was in Altoona.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to the Curve game the other day, and voila, I bought a beer at the Trogs beer stand, which I thought would thrill you. Did it thrill you?
I'm envious.
Although in York, I wondered, it's on Brooks Robinson Way, and there's a big statue of Brooks Robinson, and I look him up, and he's born in Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, right.
So I looked it up. He played in York one season, his first season. And I just thought how York is so void of baseball history that they have pulled a guy who played 1 year to basically be their grand poobah of baseball in York, PA.
Well, there's definitely a lot of Orioles fans in York too. I mean, that's a market.
York town. It's a York
45
town.
minutes. Only 45 minutes growing up in that area. Only 45 minutes to Baltimore. More Orioles fans than Phillies, actually, or Pirates.
Well, we stopped at the Utz factory, and there were big bags and jugs of Oriole potato chips.
Yep. Hanover, not very far from New York, right?
It wasn't at all. But I thought I was pumped up when Verlander came out. What does he have to lose? We all respect him because of his marriage. Yeah. For the first time, he's become a Bush of the League. Not even Kate Upton can save him on this one. He was going to be the voice. What would Megan Rapinoe have thought of Justin Verlander after he pussed out?
Not much. Probably not much.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I was so disappointed. I'm with you, Dave, because I thought, here's a guy who's an elder statesman, respected within the league, could be a voice of the players, and then he just pussed. And
his logic wasn't going to go away.
He had a soapbox. He used it that right, and
he got spanked. Yes, sir.
What does he have to lose? He's got a guaranteed contract. What are they going to do? Not pitch him? Really?
That's what I'm saying.
I didn't see it, so I'm disappointed just listening to you guys. But I was thrilled, Dave. I think I texted you. I was thrilled when he came out. I mean, here we finally have a guy. Baseball is so like the Players Association. They're so afraid of like any kind of like divergent opinion, and he finally does it. A guy with this kind of rep. The guy's been good this long. And then if he backtrack, yeah, it's bad. But I don't know. I mean, I don't understand it. I mean, I kind of wonder what the hell are Torre and Leland thinking? Like, are they looking at the facts?
Well, Torre's a baseball man. I mean, he's in the front office.
They're both lifers, but are they looking at the facts? The facts are not good.
I'm sure he was told to. Bergman just got Tony Kubek at second base.
Ouch.
A little shot to the neck chin area.
Wow.
Oh man, that's not good.
But I mean, the game is not in good shape. So I mean, I guess Torre's a lifetime employee of Major League Baseball, and he's considered, the godfather or whatever. But you know what, dude? If you think that like giving Verlander the business and telling him to be quiet, whether he backs up or not, you think people are idiots? Most people who follow baseball have been watching a game for 35 years or more. If you read all the statistics, what do you think? We're fools, Joe? Like, wake up.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
One thing I did like in the All-Star game was when they mic'd the batter. That I thought was cool.
Yeah. That was different, but then they went overboard and mic'd everybody and their mothers.
Yeah.
See that?
They should have mic'd me yelling at Verlander, "You pussy," because that would have been good.
Why do we have to have so much talking to people during the game? Can you guys figure that out? Is that like the millennial thing? Like we ask a hockey coach in 82 games to talk. McGuire's got to go talk to behind the bench. He says the same damn thing 82 times. We got to get the puck behind the defense. We got to make sure we don't have any neutral zone turnovers, and we can't let them outskate us. Do I need to hear this 82 times? What the hell is the value of this?
Eventually, they want to say we're going to matriculate down the field. That's what they're looking for these players to think.
But I mean, why do we have to have these conversations all the time going on during the game? Is this just something I don't understand? Is this just the new world? We have to have a personal relationship with Christian Yelich or Bellinger? Seriously?
Well, the thing was kind of neat. Of course, if you're Freddie Freeman, how are you going to concentrate on the ball at that point?
Yeah. Right.
With people in your ear. But
thank the XFL for that. That was one of the things that they brought to sports.
Yeah, I thought you'd thank Hank Stram for it. Yeah.
Does it really make you enjoy the game that much more? I don't understand. I just don't get it. Guys, I don't get it.
If you do what NFL Films does and you do it not necessarily live, but it comes out later, it's going to sound more.
Oh, yeah. Totally different. I have a totally different view of that. Yeah. Totally different.
But when I had trouble, who were the guitarists at the beginning? And why did they have to have a split screen with the players as they were introducing them? Who were the guitarists?
I missed that part.
I don't understand, Dave. You and me have chatted about this via text or whatever. Why do we have to have everything together? At a football game, I don't need a concert. At a concert, I don't need a football game. Why do we have to do this?
Well, this was even bizarre because I don't know who the hell these guys were. There was no singer. Every time a guy was announced, they'd split screen because these guys would play a different song. And I had no idea who the hell they were. I didn't know who Max was, but he did good at the national anthem. Apparently, we were afraid of what he would say. So I don't know if is he a rapper?
I guess, and maybe Torre talked to him before and said, look, no swearing and no juice baseball.
That's right. Watch the talk about various things. Yes,
he was good. He was good. He did a good rendition. I was proud of him. If I was his father, I'd say, "Good job, son." And we'd have a cats in the cradle moment.
I just don't understand why we have to have MTV, professional sports, comedy. Why does this all have to be mixed together? This is not brain surgery. This is not saving human beings or whatever. But by the same token, do we really need all this stuff together? I mean, can't you just tune into the All-Star game?
Here's the thing, though, Gary. I'm going to disagree with you on the one part of it. I may have been one of 5 people who liked Dennis Miller on Monday Night Football.
Okay.
I thought he was funnier than him.
Count me as 2 as 5 people because I liked them too.
The funniest thing he said, they were talking about, I don't remember what player was, having a minor groin surgery the week before, and he said, listen, if someone's coming toward my groin with a knife, there's nothing minor about that.
I'm not suggesting this has to be an IBM corporate meeting, but I think it's gone too far, Chris. That's where I'll disagree with you. I think it's gone way too far. I think, try to entertain, put a little bit of entertainment in it, but ESPN has gone so far off the deep end. Some of those anchors, honest to God, either those pretty babes or like Van Pelt or Maine, they're not talking about sports at all. All they want to do is get their comedy routine out. I don't have a time for that. And I think there's a lot of people, that's why some of these ratings are down. It's gone too far.
I don't have a problem with it per se as far as the music aspect of it. Just do it at the beginning of the game, do it in the middle of the game, do it at the end of the game. Very irritating when I'm trying to listen to them announce and their qualifications as all-stars for, and then I have to go to a split screen with people I have no idea who the hell they are. Give me somebody I know. That's all I'm asking.
They're all dead.
I know.
They're all dead.
I want to know them. Okay? That's all I want to know, damn it.
Can't you do one thing at a time? Can't you just do one thing at a time?
Huh?
One thing at a time. Like, you want to insert the music in this stuff, but every NFL championship game, we want to have a concert at halftime. That's
like
fine.
They have a Rapino disease. They have to go 20 places at the same time. We've used her now 18 times in this show, and I'm going to want to get another couple so we can make an even 20. So let's go quickly, very quickly around the table. Fletcher, your prediction of the week.
Well, the Pirates close out the first half of the season pretty strong, only 2.5 back. Next week or so is going to tell us a lot about this team. After the Cubs, they're going to be, they're going to open with the Cubs. Then they're going to head to St. Louis. They've got 12 left with the Cubs, 10 with the Cardinals, 6 left with the Brewers. Thankfully, only 6. So I think that if they win 18 of those 28 games, they're in good shape to win the division. That's my prediction. And one more thing, Chris Archer, just stop pitching to contact. Stop it.
I agree. Gary.
Stole my thunder. I don't think they're going to make any big moves. I think they're going to sit tight. I don't blame them. I think the division is winnable. I think the Brewers and Cubs are very vulnerable in different areas. They're getting some guys back now, too. I think the Pirates could be in this. So I'm not just making a prediction for this week, but I don't think that division. That's the only one that's going to have any appeal, even though they're all fairly mediocre for the rest of the way that it appears. So everybody else, most of the other divisions, there's a big pull away.
Yeah, and I think they're going to need better pitching either from inside or from outside the organization.
Maybe,
but we'll see what happens. I mean, I like the fact that they were talking to the Dodgers about Vasquez, and they set the bar really high, and they should.
Yeah,
I agree.
You want him, pay for him.
I agree.
Pay for him. I think Joe Madden has figured out the Pirates, or so he says. He thinks they're peaked and they're not going to be there going down. I think Joe's become a little irritated at the Pirates. I think we hurt his feelings.
I don't know that Joe survives this season.
I think he's in trouble. I agree, Chris. I'm with you.
To worry about his own ass with the money they put into this team. The fact that this race is even close is embarrassing.
It is. It kind of is. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I'll tell you what, I think the Pirates should, if I'm to move anybody, and the guy who I would move to get value is Marte. But other than that, I don't want to give up what little prospects I have left. Who came out today with in the top 50. Apparently, Brian Hayes has moved up to 17th in the minors. They say his defense is an 80, and 80 is a perfect score. So that's from Baseball America. Mitch Keller dropped from 18 to 40, which, again, there's not a huge difference in my mind between the number 15 and the number 80 guy. So doesn't mean a whole bunch. But my prediction of the night, this is a Thursday night. In 22 minutes, the Edmonton Eskimos are going to face British Columbia.
Right.
In British Columbia.
No team likes to play there, Dave. No team likes to play there.
Another part of the world, man. Going to the other half of the world.
I'm saying, people are saying BC is going to take this game. I'm reading right now. They're telling me this. Okay? No. The Edmonton Eskimos are going to win by a touchdown and what's the 1 point? A single? It's called something else. It's called something crazy. You just got the game, Gary. Gary got a
I got a Canadian football. I love Canadian football.
I love it too.
Yeah.
A single. We'll call it a single, okay? They're going to win by 8 points in British Columbia. If you're near the casino, you go make that bet right now. I guess you can't really make the bet because we're taping. You two guys can make that bet right now. I guarantee it. And
Let me give you guys a chuckle.
All right.
The NFL doesn't have a salary cap, but the NFL has kind of a control of it. The average NFL team, I think the salary bucket's $175 million. What do you think it is in a Canadian Football League?
No idea.
$5.6 million.
Wow.
Average Canadian Football League players making $90,000 a year.
Well, if you want to pay Johnny Manziel $5 million, you'll do that.
Well, there's a reason why Montreal is one of the worst teams in the league. Probably that was one of the reasons.
Yeah.
Think about that. $5.6 million for a roster.
Yeah.
That's staggering.
Again,
Wow.
That's the revenue.
They're polite because they're playing in Canada.
Double taxation. But I do love the game, though. I do love the game. So it's fun. These games are fun to watch, man.
Well, then you tune in now 21 minutes. It's gone.
I probably will, actually.
21 minutes. You tune in on your ESPN Plus. And if once you don't have it, you get it now. Because that's the only place you can get. Unless it's on ESPN2. It might be on ESPN.
I think ESPN should be giving us some time because we've been giving them all. I gave them all the props about the boxing, and now you're giving them the props about this. So
about the CFL.
They should give us some time on their air, I think.
All right. We'll ask. We'll go for it. So. But next week is going to be episode 11. Do you know why it's going to be episode 11?
Because this is episode 10.
And it's one more than 10.
That's right. That's
why
the number next after 10. I remember that.
Oh, it's one of the great clips from what was the movie about the rock band?
Spinal Tap. You turn it up to 11.
Why 11? Because it's one more than 10. Oh, all right, gentlemen. Well, I'm going to dig in right now.
There you go.
With a little bit.
Are you a bubble man, Dave?
You better believe it.
R.I.P. Jim Bouton.
You better believe it.
Yeah.
Oh. Wow, you look like Clint Hurdle.
Another pop. Got to have the snuff for that, though.
I'm going to stiffen up my hips so I can really get the look for him.
In episode 11, you have a snuff at the lower lip there. You got to have that snuff in there. Okay?
There you go. All right.
You got to have that.
There it is.
Gentlemen.
All right.
You have a good week. And watch the CFL on ESPN right now.
I'll be good.
19 minutes. We've gone from 22 to 19 minutes.
All right.
Good night.
You have a good night too, David.
Yeah.
What was our nickname? We all have the same nickname. Bulldog.
Bulldog.
Jim Bouton's nickname. All right. Have a good night. We'll see you. Get on your TV now.